This game is fantastic. The art, the gameplay, the ideas, I love them all. This game is awesome. The level of polish and cohesiveness with the graphics is a real achievement, and the gameplay is well thought out. The idea of dungeon crawling with cards and card duelists along the way is wow, I love the atmosphere and the team survival.
I'm honestly kinda speechless with this one. So hello everyone, I finally did it. After 4.5 years of game dev, I managed to make a good game. What's this game about, you might be asking? And I'll answer that, but first we need to talk about the game jam I made it for. Pirate Software Jam 15 is a 2-week-long game jam hosted by Thor. If you watch YouTube shorts and you're interested in game dev, you probably have seen some of his videos pop up every so often. Unlike every other jam, participants needed to make a game design document alongside their WebGL games. With 15,000 participants, mostly made up of beginners, the jam managed to get around 2,400 submissions. Another way this jam differs from the rest is that it was judge rated. Yes, you heard that right. A team of 42 judges went through all 2,400 games in 2 weeks and gave each game at least 1 rating. Mine was lucky enough to get 2 ratings, which got me into a tie with another game for the highest rated score. Now, my game unfortunately wasn't chosen for one of the 10 winners. The main reason was that the judges seemed to have preferred weird and wacky mechanics instead of a solid and complete game, which is fair enough, I guess. So anyways, what's this game about? Umblight is a deck builder roguelike centered around combining cards and traveling. The game is split into 3 areas, each with their own unique cards, bosses, and mechanics. It starts out in a forest area, where the player learns the basic card mechanics slowly over time. I believe that having a dedicated tutorial is one of the key features that made my game perform so well. A lot of complicated jam games usually just do a huge info dump of a tutorial in the form of a text bar in the game itself or in the page description that nobody reads. My tutorial wasn't exactly perfect, because there's a slight info dump at the start when explaining the card fights, but after that the deck building, light coins, skills, and special boss properties are introduced later when they first come up, and that's a really good way of doing tutorials. Telling the player how a certain mechanic works when they first encounter it will make them learn those mechanics much faster. The first area ends in a boss fight, during which the player learns about card skills. Card skills are unique powers that a card can have. This can range from taking resources from your opponent to basically becoming unkillable. The player unlocks their first skill at the start of Area 2, the Glitched Cave. Unlocking a skill gives a chance for it to appear on every shadow card you draw. The enemies here get a lot harder than in the first area. Some of them also have skills unlocked, so this is where the game gets really interesting. Sometimes sacrificing health is worth over activating skills of your enemy. But of course we're not done yet. After another boss, the player enters the last area, a volcano. The player's goal here is to get to the top and defeat the final boss of the game. The skills in this area are insanely overpowered, ranging from +1 damage to all your cards placed on the board, to cards being able to revive once after death, basically doubling their power. The last boss is really strong. It has 3 of the strongest skills active, so if you can't defeat it quickly, you'll almost certainly lose in the endgame. And yes, I did all of this in 2 weeks, and a fully original soundtrack with 7 songs, completely solo. But how did I do all of this in 2 weeks? Let's go all the way back to the start of the jam. It was day 1, and I decided to start streaming a little bit before the theme reveal, which didn't go well. Not the streaming part, but the theme reveal. So basically, the way it worked for Pirate Software Jam was that Thor picked 10 themes he liked, and those were split into 2 groups. For each group, Twitch chat chose the next theme, so we got 2 winners to vote from. Now there are already a few problems with this. Mainly the fact that the majority of Thor's viewers aren't participating in the jam, and yet they can still vote. The other one is that Twitch chats really like to tie votes as a joke, mostly because they don't actually care about the result, just want to be really funny, which they aren't. And even worse, at the end, instead of choosing one theme from the two winners, Twitch had decided that yes, we should combine the two to make one atrocious theme. Woo, I love democracy. So that's the story on how we got shadows and alchemy as a theme. Yay, I guess. Anyways, as I do with most jams, I immediately started brainstorming on what I could make. From the start, I knew that I wanted to do a card game, because I haven't done that before, and I got inspired by Thor's Inscription playthrough recently, so I wanted to do something similar. After about an hour of planning, I started making a prototype, mostly because I really wanted to validate that the game would be at least somewhat fun. At the time, I've never played a digital card game before, so I was going in completely blind, but I think it helped me to come up with some more unconventional ideas. It took me the first 2 days to create something playable. By then, the player could already combine cards. Primitive version of skills were also implemented, and the game had a functional enemy AI, which is often regarded as the hardest part to make in card games, so let me explain how it works. Knowing nothing how they actually work in card games, I decided to choose the way that was the most obvious to me: chess engines. Now, I've never made a chess engine before, but I've watched a couple of videos before on how they generally work, so I tried to do something similar here. If you're unaware, most chess engines that aren't using actual machine learning work by evaluating, basically scoring, each possible move and choosing the best one. This is exactly what I'm doing for my enemy AI as well. I made a function to evaluate a card based on its stats. The AI goes through all cards in its hand and tries to combine them all by finding the best combination. It also evaluates what would happen if it would place down a card, use a light coin, or draw another card. All of these evaluations were tuned with parameters to make the AI more balanced and slightly smarter. Unfortunately, unlike many chess engines, my enemy AI cannot look into the future yet. Adding the so-called depth to my AI would have been way too big of a task for the gem version, but I'm definitely adding it in the future. Once the enemy finds the highest evaluation, it plays that move and starts over until either it plays down 3 cards, or because it hit its threshold of aggressiveness. The aggressiveness rises based on how much health the enemy has, so at higher health it tries to save more shadow by placing less cards. That's basically how the enemy AI works in my game. As I said, I'm going to improve it a lot more, mainly by giving it depth, but also the current version doesn't take skills into account, which is also something I'll have to work on later as well. On the 3rd day, I did some off-camera grinding and worked on the logic behind the 3D sections. The way it works is quite simple. All of the 3D section is just placed inside the sub-viewport. For Unity users, these are basically render textures. This way I can control the resolution of the scene, and it also gives an easy way to bring 2D and 3D elements together. For the visual style, I basically just copied my OKLab color palette shader that I showcased in this video. Each area in the game has a different preset for this shader, so this way I can make the game look completely fresh with very little effort. The pixel art vibe and the cool color palettes are there to hide my terrible 3D art skills, but they work well enough to fool most people into thinking that I'm actually good at art, so I keep using it in the future. Most of day 4 and 5 were spent on making pixel art for the card battles. It's honestly nothing special. The shader covers up the lack of detail and it just works. I overlaid 2 textures on top of the table to make it look a bit more interesting, and added some gradients to the outside to make the scene look less flat. My filter really likes to break up these smooth color transitions into much more interesting color bands, so I took advantage of that. This is also the day where I added procedural enemy generation to the game. It's just a bunch of linear functions made in such a way that the enemy's health, skill chance and skill amount increase based on the amount of enemies you encountered throughout your run. Day 6 and 7 didn't have anything interesting to talk about. I did some standard sound design on day 6, and made the deck building part on day 7. Day 8 was slightly more exciting, as this is when I started decorating the rooms in the forest area. I started by making 3 trees and 2 bushes using a software called TreeIt, which is a free foliage generator that I started using recently. I also needed a grass shader, so I quickly found one on godotshaders.com. I actually used this exact shader before, so it wasn't that hard to add it into my game. It works by scattering a bunch of meshes using a multi-mesh instance node, which is built into Godot and works really well. I managed to control where the grass spawns by duplicating the ground mesh and then removing the faces where I would have my path. This way I could use that mesh to spawn grass while still having a proper ground mesh. I purposefully made each room really dark, only highlighting the important parts like doors to the next room, treasure, and other interactables. Keeping everything else dark is a really good way to tell the player what they're supposed to do, while also making each room need less detail put into it. Dark areas won't be seen by anyone, so you can just ignore them while decorating. Let's skip all the way to day 10, where I decided that I should do a playtest with some of the awesome people in the Jam's Discord server, and I'm really glad I did. I set up a Google Forms link for them to fill out, and there was one issue that continuously popped up from multiple people. The RNG was super unfair. Okay, I should probably clarify that a bit more. See, whenever you start a card battle, you don't really have many options. You have to draw shadow cards and combine them to block your enemy. The issue arises from the fact that shadow cards have their stats randomized. Their power can either be a 1 or 2, and their combined cost is either nothing or 1. In this version of the game, you could get really unlucky at the start of a battle, with the enemy placing down a 3 or even a 4 power card on the first round, and you just couldn't do anything about that. This made the start of fights feel really unfair, because this behavior wasn't that uncommon to see. My solution was quite simple. I made the first 2 turns of battles have seeded RNG. This way both players would get the same shadow cards at the start of the game. This fixed the issue in a really seamless way, and the playtesters really liked it afterwards. The RNG in the later parts is much less of an issue, because by then you have more room to strategize and use your special cards properly. After fixing these issues found by playtesters, I spent the rest of the jam making the other 2 areas and polishing the hell out of the game. One of those highly polished areas that I'm really proud of is the main menu. I always say first impressions matter a lot, and having this awesome main menu made my game feel actually finished, rather than just another Gamejam game. Thanks for watching. If you find the Umblight interesting, please consider hitting the wishlist button on Steam. See ya!